What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Establish the Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. I'm Drew Dinkmeyer alongside Mike Gallagher, here to walk you through Monday, November 1st. We're into November, the injury report for this 9-game slate. And Mike, we got hit like right off the bat today with the big news of the slate. Joel Embiid being ruled out for rest, not on a back-to-back situation. So a little bit concerning if you're a Sixers fan or an Embiid fan or an Embiid season-long fantasy player, because this is not exactly the spot you would have expected this rest to come 6 games into the season.
Yeah, he's got an MRI on that knee that's been bothering him since the first week of the season. Yeah, you mentioned the non-back-to-back. Oof, oh boy. Yeah, season long, you're real nervous if you spend a first-round pick on him. This is knee that bothered him last year. They have a back-to-back coming up. I think they start 6 games in 9 nights. They have a back-to-back coming up on a Wednesday, Thursday against the Bulls, and then at Pistons. So he's probably not playing that Pistons game. But we'll get to that. So, tonight, you just start with Andre Drummond. He's going to be pretty easy play, looking at pretty good minutes. Obviously, Tobias. Seth Curry's in a really good spot. The Blazers are giving up a ton of spot-up possessions and wide-open threes. So I think Seth could be kind of a sneaky little guy to fit in there. Matt's going to have to compete with, just to put a bow on it, us. Shake Milton's minutes are going to come up. Doc said he's considering starting him basically until his conditioning gets up to speed. So don't forget, before he hurt his ankle on the 10th, he was making a push to start. So it might be a pretty even split. And Shake will really, really carry the second unit that comes off the bench too. So, yeah, definitely a lot of value against a tired Blazers team on a back-to-back. So a lot of guys in Philly will be wanting to plug in.
Yeah, Drummond 4,400 on DraftKings, 5,400 on FanDuel is going to be likely the chalkiest play on the entire slate, and with good reason. We've seen Andre Drummond be extremely productive in a starting role from a fantasy perspective before. Would expect that to be the case again tonight. And as you alluded to, there's lots of other beneficiaries that could pick up the slack from Philadelphia's standpoint, and there's also some potential rotation turnover just naturally as Shake Milton continues to get healthier. So we'll continue to watch out for that in terms of the lineups and how things shake up there. But this is a different level of Philadelphia without Joel Embiid and without Ben Simmons. And so I would also say that normally Philadelphia is not a situation that you look to attack a lot in terms of DFS, but I think their defense has taken a decent hit from where any projection system is going to be able to put it or label it. And so I do think the Blazers guys, even on the second night of a back-to-back, I think they're interesting in tournaments just for that. We'll talk about that more on the DFS premium show, but losing Embiid and downgrading to Drummond is a big deal for their defense. As long as Matisse Thybulle isn't out there catching other people's jumpers like he was over the weekend. What other big injury news are we looking at this evening, Mike?
Let's just hit the questionable. The big questionable is in Indiana. We've got Malcolm Brogdon, missed the last game from a hamstring strain/pull, as Rick Carlisle called it. It's called soreness, so he might be back, but generally those hammy pulls, especially given it's Brogdon and how he kind of wears down, you'd think he sits. So that would put TJ McConnell likely in the starting lineup. A lot of Chris Duarte minutes. Karis LeVert also questionable. Played the first half in his return. That was that was planned by Rick Carlisle. Said to just run him out there for kind of a normal set in the first half rather than have halftime kind of go through it again, just knock it out. So he'll probably play both halves, and that's probably encouraging that they played him kind of normal stints in the first half. So maybe they go full. I don't think they will, but there's definitely the possibility that everything went well. They could run him out there. Kellen Martin only did 3-on-3, so if they're both out, he probably wouldn't play either. So it could get really, really thin in Indiana.
Yeah, and we've seen them play really thin already. We kind of know what that looks like. It's a lot of TJ McConnell. It's a lot of the offense running through Sabonis and Miles Turner and Chris Duarte, and there's not a lot of depth. So we saw like Torrey Craig pop off in one of those games before. There's opportunities for somebody to get hot and kind of end up being a difference maker on the slate. But you just look at, man, if you remove Brogdon and LeVert and you're already down TJ Warren and you're down Isaiah Jackson, you're down Keelan Martin, it's just a tough scene for Indiana this year. So we'll see we'll see how things progress there from the Indiana standpoint. But obviously, if you did remove Brogdon and LeVert, it opens up a lot of opportunity because there's just a lot of usage for other players to take there. In terms of the other kind of big fantasy impact news was, something that also impacts my life quite a bit tonight. As I'm going to the Knicks Toronto game here in my backyard, and no Scotty Barnes tonight for Toronto, looking doubtful. So I shouldn't say no Scotty Barnes, but looking doubtful that he'll play. He's listed as doubtful on the injury report. Figuring this one out for Toronto is intriguing because they're a team that does not have a lot of depth. And so there's the chance that somebody can step right into a major role. But because they don't have a lot of depth, there's also the chance that it just gets spread out across a bunch of different pieces. How do you expect Toronto to try to fill the large void that is left by Scotty Barnes?
So the main power forward they've used behind OG/Scotty Barnes has been easily Chris Boucher. Almost all the lineups without Barnes in there have had Chris Boucher in them. So we know that Nick Nurse doesn't really like putting Boucher out against big body or banging guys, which is not great, against the Knicks front court. So had it been somebody else, I'd feel really good about Boucher today.
Yeah.
But they might just go small, put OG on Randall. Obviously, Mitch. I love Mitch's matchup today, by the way. And then maybe they go Svi. I don't think they would go Banton in the first unit. Maybe they bring Dragic back and go super small that way. There's a lot of ways they could play it, but I think they're going to want to put size out there. So I still think it's Boucher, but I don't feel confident about that. OG's going to probably play a ton out there too, and maybe they go Precious. Precious has seen 3 minutes next to Kem Birch. Should add that Nick Nurse said he wants to play Kem Birch more after Birch kind of looked good over the weekend. So maybe there's a starting lineup change, especially given the size advantage that the Knicks are going to have in the front court, especially losing Scotty Barnes in depth there. But yeah, I want to think it's Boucher, but I don't feel good about it at all, especially if he's not starting.
Yeah, and there's a couple things I don't feel good about there. One, we know over the last year and a half or so that there's been way more negative comments from Nick Nurse about Chris Boucher than there have been positive comments. And so it seemed like he's been very, very frustrated. And that might just be the result of like Chris Boucher kind of being a fantasy and media darling in terms of like wanting to get him minutes and like so many questions about it. And then he doesn't do a lot of the great little things on the floor to impact winning, which drives coaches nuts. And so you look at kind of the matchup with Randall, and I don't know if they choose, like they don't have good options. The options are either start Boucher and try to preserve some of the offensive workload for OG as well by not trying to tax OG by putting him on Julius right away. Or the option is to, I think your best matchup for Julius Randle is to go with OG and then hope that Van Vliet can generate like a ton of offense and OG can find his spots here and there. And in that situation, I think you'd start either Svi or Banton. I think Banton is viable just because he does a lot of the things Scotty does in terms of his length and his ability to facilitate in different things. And you have the backup depth at guard to basically move Banton to like a wing player and then play Dragic as your primary backup point guard, or Malachi Flynn, probably Dragic, but either one of those guys. So there's a lot of different lineup combinations that Nick Nurse can use here. We could also see more like Isaac Bonga. Like there's just a lot of ways that they can go with things here. And it's a matchup against a Knicks team that is pretty good defensively. And Toronto's playing pretty slow. So I don't know that this will be a situation I'm immediately attacking in like cash games, but obviously we know Boucher has a huge ceiling when he's able to stay on the floor. I don't know that he'll be able to stay on the floor. And that's my biggest concern with him here. And then they also could go with double big lineups with Birch and Achua, because Achua is like, they're both kind of undersized centers. So they're both guys that could defend guys who want to like, bang around and throw their bodies around like Julius Randle. I think that's the least likely outcome by like a wide margin. So I don't know how to handicap this one. I will say that if Boucher is announced as the starter, we'll move stuff around a little bit there. But it like Svi looks like the guy that makes the most sense to see the biggest minutes increase. I still don't know. He's such a weak point per minute producer. I don't know from a DFS perspective will be, that big of a deal.
Yeah, they ran Boucher out there at a lot of center last year against the Knicks for whatever that's worth. Not much, but without Pascal Siakam, I think it could be a pretty tight big man rotation between Boucher, Birch, and Precious Achua. So we'll see.
What do you think Boucher? What do you think Boucher for minutes tonight would be? Like, he is just always such a difficult player to project.
Yeah, I think he has to play at least a little bit. So like, if everything goes bad, we're probably thinking like 16, and then if everything goes right, I think probably like 26. So
okay, we're on the same boat. Then.
Pretty close.
Yeah, we're on the same. I was concerned you were thinking there might be like a 28-30 type situation in there, and the floor might be closer to 20. But I think
they want to run OG at the floor a little bit.
I think low 20s is the right projection point for him, like high teens, low 20s, and he can do damage in that spot. But I do think the other thing that I will just say about Boucher, we know of him to be a very good fantasy point per minute producer historically. A lot of that historically is him playing the 5. He's not going to be as efficient kind of playing the 4. So, yeah. And, people in the chat questioning the Knicks defense because they lost one of their 6 games to the Magic. Teams sometimes don't play well. That happens in the NBA.
Yeah, it happens.
All right. Other questionables on the slate. We'll stick with the Knicks since we're right there. Nerlens Noel is questionable. It sounds like he's going to play, though. We moved him to in on the projections behind Mitch Robinson. Mostly just takes minutes from Taj Gibson. I don't think it really changes things dramatically. I do think it improves the Knicks defense because I think Noel is a very, very good pick and roll defender. Not that Taj isn't. Taj is still a good defender. He's just limited, in his late 30s by his athleticism, that Noel has a different ability to contest kind of at the rim. Now, the Raptors don't bring a lot of verticality to the game.
Yeah.
They have a lot of guys who stay low to the floor in terms of their bigs. So it's not as big of a deal to the Raptors. Like, I don't think it impacts their specific offense very much. And from a DFS perspective, I don't think it really does anything. Like, if Mitch stays out of foul trouble, Mitch is going to be on the floor, whether Noel's back or not.
Yeah, and I'll add, they've gone up against some big bigs. JV, Vooch, Embiid, the Magic front court guys, Time Lord. So this is the first time Mitch really gets an undersized front court against him. So I freaking love Mitch today. Possible flag plant coming there. Let's talk a little. I'm with you. I don't think it affects Mitch. It lowers his upside a little bit. But if he's humming, Tibbs is going to keep him out there. Tibbs trusts him for conditioning and everything like that. The news that just hit before we came on is Kevin Love. He's out for protocol. So that's actually kind of big news because they've been running it really tight in the front court with basically a 3-man front rotation with him, Evan Mobley, and Jared Allen. So that's interesting. It should add that JB Bickerstaff really talked up Jetty Osman in the last game. Kind of said he wanted to play him more. So naturally, I think Jetty Osman's a guy that benefits here. Possibly sliding Lauri Markkanen down, maybe as the first sub out, and then coming in earlier. I think that's how they want to do it. I don't think they break up that first unit. So Jetty's looking at more minutes. Probably see Lamar Stevens in the rotation. Mobley could play so many minutes in this matchup too, with the pace this game's going to be at. You're going against I talked about it in matchups. The Hornets off makes are the fastest team in the NBA. The Cavs are the slowest team, or second slowest team. Offensive pace, so it's a really big clash in styles. Good for a lot of transition points. This could be a pretty fantasy-friendly game to maybe go after some guys.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really interesting rotation switch. I think you nailed the way that I'm thinking about it initially. I think there's a chance that like Dean Wade could play some, but I don't think it would be more than like a handful of minutes. I think really sliding Lauri back to the 4 at a more natural spot. Jetty taking over more minutes at the 3, opening up maybe some minutes for like Windler, Lamar Stevens, those types of guys as well that have played in these games when Sexton missed and they were shorthanded. So I think that's the way it's going to be. And I think that this matchup is also one with Charlotte where you lean smaller than bigger just because of the speed that they play at and everything. Yep. So and the Nutridad very active in the chat today saying I'm a huge Knicks fan, which I have to say, you must be new around here because I'm not a big fan.
Yeah, right.
Nope. I've hated the Knicks for most of my life.
Yeah.
Love injury definitely opens up a lot of rebounding as well. So I ticked back Lauri Markkanen and Jared Allen back to their career rebounding rates as opposed to kind of scaled down rebounding rates that they had with Kevin Love this year. So I think a lot of things that are like small little tweaks help help Cleveland facilitate a little bit more fantasy appeal tonight. And I think we could get back to seeing that Evan Mobley like 38 minminutes. Like I think those are in the range of outcomes again. When I think Love got going a little bit, they weren't really there. So yeah, I think that's a big one. The other news we got this morning on a big man front was Daniel Gafford expected to return. There were some question marks about whether that would be a longer injury than it seemed to be, just like 2 or 3 games that he missed there. His return, I think, is sort of a big deal for Washington in a few ways. One, Montrezl Harrell, obviously, like the minutes come way, way down because we had Montrezl Harrell projected for like 33 minutes. We brought him down to like 25 and a half with Gafford back, assuming Gafford can play his normal role, which I think was going to be pegged for like 22 to 26 coming into the season. But I think Harrell outplayed him and his role was down to like 18 to 22. I think this first game back, they might be kind of slower to bring Gafford at full pace. So I think Gafford's going to be probably in the low 20s. I don't think he's going to make a huge impact from a DFS perspective. But what he does do is he just flattens out the rotation where Kuzma's minute ceiling comes down. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's minute ceiling comes down. A lot of those wings who showed really big rebounding rates, their upside comes down a little bit. Like we saw Bradley Beal post 10, 8, and 7 rebounds in the 3 games that Gafford was either injured early in or missed. And he had 3 and 3 in the previous 2 games before that. One of the reasons we hopped on a Bradley Beal under prop today on rebounds. So I think you're going to see from Washington's perspective, all of these guys who've been priced up a little bit from playing without Daniel Gafford are probably a little bit overpriced going into a matchup with the Hawks. That they were great in that last game against the Hawks offensively. Mm-hmm. They put a team that I think is a good defense in the Hawks in the blender basically all game long and were able to get whatever they wanted. I still think we were on John Collins big time last time against Washington because we thought that second unit would lack size to contest his verticality when they're going to have to ask Davis Bertans or Montrezl Harrell, who are both too small for traditional centers to go up and get it. Gafford has more verticality to him, but I still think, especially if Gafford starts, those rotations will still work in the favor of Collins, where he'll get some potential spot center minutes against Harrell, who does not have the verticality to challenge John Collins. And you mentioned, with Atlanta, with Washington, they've really done a good job at defending the 3-point line. So we're still interested, even though I think Washington's defense improves quite a bit here, still interested in the Atlanta bigs being able to take advantage and pick and roll.
Love the Atlanta bigs today. They really, really go after front courts that are undersized. That's been a thing for pretty much a year and a half now. So yeah, we'll be talking up John Collins a little bit later today. Another recent injury is Patrick Beverley has a calf injury. So I think they're going to torch the Magic. Magic have the worst defense in the NBA. Also going to make up a lot of steals, but there's young ball handlers. So I don't know what Jordan McLaughlin's price is, but if you wanted to go after garbage time, go that route. Like, not a terrible idea. Maybe D'Angelo, make some mistakes to get into foul trouble or something like that. But something to keep an eye on.
I think Beverly's absence is going to open up for a little bit more ball handling from both D'Angelo and Anthony Edwards. They had been pretty comfortable playing those guys like off ball as 2 guards, basically, when paired with Beverly. And Beverly's been doing a lot of the bring the ball up and then kind of initiate to somebody coming off a screen. And so I think it might get the ball in the hands of these guys a little bit more. It'll be interesting to see how they choose to replace those minutes. I think McLaughlin is the most natural choice to do so. But I think they also could, there's just, they have like a lot of these spare part pieces that they can kind of slide in there with a Kogi or, they've been playing Vanderbilt more of late. So I think there's definitely different ways that Minnesota can go for this, but it's a really good matchup for efficiency against Orlando. And so I think there's a little bit more ceiling to Anthony Edwards and D'Angelo Russell than there was before if Pat Bev is unable to go tonight.
Magic have been getting killed by wings. So I love Ant today. We'll definitely talk more about him later on the show. Other than that, we've got mostly. I think we've hit everything. Gary Harris is questionable. I don't think he's going to play. There's no reason to play him. They got Chimo Kiki back. Definitely worth noting that Wendell Carter Jr.'s minutes got cut in the back-to-back, according to Jamal Mosley. So that's a little scary. Not in a back-to-back today. This thing could get out of hand. I'm not really into the Magic guys. Maybe Minnesota blows them out. Anything else you want to hit from here?
Bobby in the chat mentions that news just hit on Zion. Scans again in 2 to 3 weeks. Cleared for 5 on 0.
No Dort.
No Dort tonight.
So
Okay.
that means it's be a blowout.
Huh.
Yeah.
No Dort
There's
tonight.
a question about.
So what do we think they go with their starting lineup?
Well, they're probably going to put Giddey at the 2. I think they would go. Did they do Poku?
I'm going to drop this question from Prez. We'll talk about that on the premium show.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll just stick to injuries here. So Giddey. So starting lineup of Shea, Giddey, Baisley, one of the bigs like Favors, JRE.
It should probably be Favors in the matchup against Zoo, but they did start Jeremiah Robinson early.
Yeah,
Favors available in the last
I could see.
I
should Maladon starting.
Yeah, that makes sense. That actually makes a lot of sense.
I think Maladon probably.
Well, they do have. It's worth noting they do have the G League guys down, so Trey Mann's not there, so they're missing a lot of depth here. So we may have a little bit more leash. Maybe they start Ty Jerome. It's worth noting Mark Dagnall says he really likes Kenrich Williams off the bench to solidify that second unit. So I wouldn't expect him to start, but possibly more minutes. We saw him cut into Darius Baisley earlier as well. Paul Watson's not available. Vit, Trey Mann, those guys are all not there. So they're suddenly pretty thin. They're actually I'm trying to think who would play. I mean, if Poku starts and he gets garbage time, I don't know. That's pretty thin, but
yeah. Jeremiah
Robinson plays the play. They may play Jeremiah at the 4 and play Baisley at the 3 sometimes. They played Baisley at the 3 a little bit last year.
Yeah,
there's a lot of ways to go.
I think they're more likely to start smaller than bigger, just because of the matchup with Reggie Jackson and Eric Bledsoe. So I think Maladon is most likely the starter. With Shea, and then I think Ty Jerome is like the primary backup guard. Ty Jerome's a great guy that you can like rotate in as a guard alongside Giddey because he gives you some floor spacing and Giddey can initiate everything. I kind of think that's the way that goes. And then Giddey's a true backup 3 that they can. Kenrich is a true backup 3. Giddey can slide over and cover some minutes at the 2. They can play Gabriel Deck some. They're going to be such a nightmare to project. We were on Dort and Baisley unders against Golden State last game because of blowout risk. And those guys played 27 and 30 minutes in the first 3 quarters. And then they did not play at all in the fourth quarter because of the blowout. But the point being, if the game was somehow like within reach, not a blowout, but like 12 instead of 22, those guys could have played 35, 36 minutes. And so like the range of outcomes on the OKC guys is just so maddening each and every night in terms of we've seen Baisley as low as 18. We have seen him on pace for as high as 34, 35. He's not eclipsed 32 yet. But it makes it very difficult to trust them in DFS, even when they get thinner and the playing time becomes condensed. It's hard to figure out. Some nights KC plays they were playing really tight against Golden State. 2 games prior, they played 13 guys in the first half. So it's super difficult to project. It's really fragile. Always be careful with OKC guys. And just generally, I always want to be different than the field with whatever the field's doing with OKC.
Yeah. Gabriel Deck also questionable too. So it could be really, really thin. Maladon if Maladon starts, he'd probably get garbage time too. So
I think so. I
mean, they just don't have any point guards. They literally have only Shea. So maybe they run Giddey at the point too. So it's I mean, as bad as this game looks from a blowout standpoint, I think they're kind of in play here. All right, I think that does it. Anything else
that'll do it. That'll do it. So for those of you out there that are enjoying the free content, please make sure to subscribe to our Established Run NBA YouTube channel here. Please continue to support the show. We'll keep putting it out Monday through Friday, 2:00 Eastern, going over the injury report each and every day. If you are a subscriber to ETR, the NBA product, thank you so much. We will see you on the 5:00 show. We will go in depth on Clippers and OKC motivation tonight, along with all the other questions that you guys have while breaking down things position by position. If you're not an ETR NBA subscriber, please consider joining us along for the ride. We've got a couple different packages. We've got an in-season DFS package that gives you the live shows, gives you Mike Gallagher's matchups column, gives you our top plays article each and every day, gives you all the projections and all that. And then we've got a betting props package as well that we're sending out through our Discord, NBA betting props each and every day. We're firing off multiple a day. We've already got 6 props locked in today. So we've gotten 80 plus through the first 10 days of the NBA season. So we are firing away, and we are firing away hard, and things are going well there. So if you're interested in betting props, you're in a legal state, you can do that with us through each of our NBA betting props package. But that's it for us. We will catch you guys again tomorrow, 2 o'clock Eastern, for Tuesday's edition of the NBA Injury Report Show, brought to you